Welcome everyone, it's Jira Bro back with you another video. Today, what we're gonna be talking about are the Jira best practices. And what is meant for best practices? Best practices is meant to keep your Jira neat and clean. Now, so let's get to it. The first and foremost, we're talking about the standardized workflow. So what is actually important in here is to try to keep your workflows simple, and you need to ensure that everyone understands the stages. Now this is actually also important because you want to import, or you want to reflect your team's processes. Now it is said to keep it simple. Now, of course, if you get a business requirement where someone knows what statuses that there need to be, because trust me, I have seen workflows like with 20 statuses and something like that, but they are actually the ones who are making the decisions. Now, you can actually try to say if you can make this workflow simpler, and to actually try not to persuade them, not to convince them. You're there to give advice. So, the practice number one is to keep your workflows simple and ensure that everyone understands it. All right, practice number two, issue types and schemes. All right, so first of all, you need to define the clear and consistent issue types and to use them consistently across projects. Now what this actually means? This actually means that you really use these issue types within your project. So we're not like talking about, there could be tasks, stories, bugs, but let's say you create another issue type for your project. You want to make sure that that's same issue type that you have created is being used within your project, and to use issue type schemes to standardize issue types across the projects. Now, issue type screen schemes are connected with the screens, which are of course connected with the screen schemes. And yes, if you have like multiple projects that almost work in a same way, but they have, let's say, they have different workflows and different processes, but they're actually based on something same, right? So let's say you have, I don't know, you have like CRM, and within that CRM you want to have like CRM automation, you want to have like CRM management and stuff like that. So those are almost like the same projects, but something is of course going to be different. For example, workflows can be different in there, and what it can use in here are of course going to be that issue type screen schemes that are going across all of those projects, which should be a good practice. Custom fields. Limit the usage of custom fields to necessary information. Now, of course, since the support ends almost for the server, and we're actually talking about like the data center, and we're talking about the cloud. I mean, yeah, cloud is hosted by the AWS, and they're actually using the S3 buckets for managing all of the storage. So like Atlassian said, you do not have to worry about that, because we're gonna make sure that the instance is like, I don't know if it's like 99% up or something like that. But then again, you want to avoid having too much custom fields to avoid the clutter. Now, yes, some of the custom fields do make sense, but they're actually like dozens of custom fields that I have seen that they weren't used anywhere at all. So you want to avoid that. And the best way to actually look at this is to use the optimizer for Jira or to use the Dr. Jira apps, because these apps were designed for the whole cleanup process. So you can see which issue type screen schemes are not being used, which custom fields were not being used, which workflows were not being used for a long time. So we're going to get to that as well. Permissions and security. Implement proper permissions to control who can access, create, edit, and transition issues. This is really, really important. Now, it really depends on the team that you are actually having. Product owner, developers, designers. You cannot allow designers to put everything into the QA and say, yeah, everything is ready for QA. They cannot do that because they're designers. Designers are passing the design to developers. Developers are passing the feature that they have developed to the QA. QA does two things. Test is good, it's done. Test is not good, gets it back to the developer. Basically, that is it. Regularly review and update user permissions. Yes, this is actually another important practice to have, because you don't want anyone to be able to do everything. So this is a big no-no. So you have to define who can do what. Project structure. Organize projects logically and consider using a standardized project template. Now, what actually this means, like standardized project template? You know that project templates, now we're talking about, you have for the software development, you have for service management, you have for work management, but mostly the most ones that are actually being used are the software developer ones. And we're talking about the Kanban, and we're talking about the Scrum. We're not talking about the top level planning, and we're not talking about the bug tracking, because no one uses those. Maybe 2% of people who are using Jira are using these type of projects. Avoid creating too many projects if they can be grouped under a single project. Yes, correct. Now, it wasn't stated like if too many projects can create clutter, but since it was mentioned that to clear the custom fields, to clean the workflows, why these things matter? Because if you have less of those things, you're avoiding complications, especially for admins. Imagine seeing 200 plus custom fields. My God, someone has to take care of that. Epic and story hierarchy. Use epics to group related stories and tasks. Yes, how do you actually do this? As a PM, usually what I did for every new feature, for example, widgetizer, that is going to be an epic. And that epic is going to consist of all user stories. Now, those user stories are the part of the issue types, and then it's really use tasks, because tasks are below the user story, because user story is kind of a much bigger thing, because it has that as I want to sort that I, then it has the acceptance criteria, then it has the design. And then you need to clearly define the hierarchy of epic stories and subtasks to maintain clarity. Yes, this is actually pretty important, because, well, it is already established where the issue hierarchy is. So epics, stories, tasks, subtasks, and that's it. And that is how it needs to be. But if business is working differently and it's operating differently, and if you're using Jira Premium, you can change the issue hierarchy, meaning that within your timelines, you're not only going to see the epics, you can see the tasks, you can see the stories, you can see all of those things within a timeline, and then you can also, so you can put more issue types within a certain hierarchy. So that is the thing that I wanted to say. Versioning and releases. To leverage versions and releases for effective release planning, and to use fixed version field to associate issues with specific releases. Yes, this is actually important because probably the features are going to be like released in versions, right? Like version 1, version 2, version 3, and etc. So it's really important to have and say we're having this user story. It's the part of the first release, it's part of the second release, it's part of the third release. Use Agile Boards effectively. Customize Agile Boards to reflect your team's workflow and regularly groom backlogs and plan sprints effectively. Right, so this is geared towards the Scrum framework because everything that is within Scrum is also within those sprints. One sprint shouldn't be longer than 2 weeks. Yeah, and to avoid the scope creep, so that means adding tasks to a sprint. You want to avoid that because on the sprint planning you want to define and say, look, we are gonna do this, this, and this, which actually those tasks are part of the sprint backlog, and when that sprint is finished, you can see which issues were finished, which were not, which are actually gonna go to the next sprint, and etc. Automation rules. Right, so you want to use, so automation rules were created with one simple goal: to eliminate the manual work. And this is not only in Jira. You have QA, for example. You have the manual QAs and you have the automation, QA automation. So what manual does is you're going feature by feature, doing this and this. With automation, you can do all of that by itself. Great example for this is Selenium. Regularly review and update automation rules as needed. So if you're for example, let's say, oh, you're creating a bug, but within that bug you need to have, I don't know, like 5 test cases. You're not always gonna create a bug and a test case 1, test case 2, test case 3, and 4 and 5. You're gonna create an automation rule for that. So every time when there is an issue that is being created and it has the issue type of a bug, create 5 subtasks, and that's it. Customize dashboards. Create informative and relevant dashboards for different user roles. What developer needs to see, what Scrum Master needs to see, what product owner needs to see. Include gadgets that provide quick insights into team progress. Regular data cleanup. Next practice. This is really important, to regularly review and clean up all the unnecessary issues. So this means like to run the health check either in Optimizer or Dr. Jira. It would be great if those apps could get included, and you can get to have, let's say, every day to have a automated scan of your instance and to see what is being used, what is not being used. Archive or delete projects that are no longer active. Correct. But usually it's gonna be like archived. Why not deleting them? Because some people, and it happens, let's say after 3 or 4 months, they get a request and then they request to others, to admins, that they need some specific project because they need either to do an audit, either to, I don't know, do some reports based on that because they were asked to. So, yeah, training and onboarding. Provide comprehensive training for new users and team members. Document and share best practices within your organization. I totally agree with this because this is going to be useful, especially for the new users and maybe for someone who didn't use Jira at all. Maybe they were using Asana, Notion, Monday, or some other things, uh, and they don't know anything about Jira. Sure, you can say to them, you know what, go to university.atlassian.com. But what I really think that would benefit is if they are actually getting onboarded in your company to create that kind of a document and to make examples of some existing projects or something like that, to say like how to create an issue, how to create a filter, how to search, how to create a custom field, how to do this, how to do that. And of course, or in order to do all of these things, you'd say to them, well, you need to be admins, right? Yeah, how to comment, how to mention someone, how to create reports, how to create dashboards, and on and on and on. Last but not least, keep Jira up to date. With ending of the server, it's not gonna be possible, but with the others, it's possible. So, yes, everything needs to be on the latest version because you saw how many vulnerabilities and CVEs were actually there, opening to a lot of critical attacks that need to be mitigated before disaster happens. So it's really important to have that test updates in staging environment before applying them to the production instance. I agree.